Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this video, I'll be demonstrating how to configure and install the TST Industries Elite-1 Fender Eliminator on Ducati Street Fighter and Panigale series bikes. What you see in front of me are two modules that comprise the Fender Eliminator. Here's the closeout module that closes out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender. It can be used on its own if you're not mounting a license plate on there, and if you just go into the track and you want to close out the hole, this is what you'll install. It is available separately, or it is also available as a combination of these two kits. This module here will assemble into a hinged assembly that holds your license plate light, and potentially signals if you're going to use signals with this configuration. I'll show you how to pre-configure this, mount it on the bike with the use of the closeout, and we'll keep it moving. Since we here at TST Industries sell our products as modules, we also do video installations as modules. In this particular case, we will lump in the installation process for the license plate light in this video because it kind of interacts in some of the steps. So we'll just lump that in. Just know that if you wish to use our license plate light with this setup, you will need to drop it into your cart because that is a separate module. One additional thought here before we move on to the installation flow. When you ditch the OEM Fender, you're ditching your mounting locations for your signals and also their connection. So something will have to be done about that. At TST Industries, we typically offer integrated taillights and various types of signaling equipment. So we will have separate videos showing you how to install those components. You could find those on our website, tstindustries.com, within the appropriate product page for each part, or our YouTube channel. You can find that there also. All right, let's talk about the installation here. Before I pre-configure this, I want to let you guys know that if any of the steps portrayed in this video are a little confusing or ambiguous, you could download and print out one of these assembly sheets from the product page of this product, and that'll help guide you in what I'm showing here on the table. So in this video, I'll be guiding you through the process on the Panigale version of the V4, but the process will be identical on the Street Fighter version of the V4. We're gonna start the process on the table here. We're gonna do some pre-configuration so that we have actual module chunks that can then be just bolted up to the bike. Here you see the closeout module. It does come with its own screws here in case you are not using it with a setup like this. So these screws will only be for the purpose of mounting the closeout to the bike without these components. Since we are showing how to install this all together, those are gonna go to the side. We're not gonna use them. This plug here is meant to close off this hole in case you're not running any wires. That would go and get pressed in all the way to that surface. And then this would be mounted on the bike if you're running only a closeout, or with these parts if you're running a license plate bracket with a closeout. So we're gonna leave this open because we are going to be installing the license plate light. And for the moment, I'm gonna push this to the side and focus only on the pre-configuration of these components into a chunk. Here we have a hinge boss. If you notice, it does have protruding shoulders coming off, meant to interface with the L bracket round holes, like so. When this is superimposed here, it creates a hinge point. So that would go together like this. And then we will superimpose the flat bracket over this here. Using the innermost holes, we will fasten that with the short countersunk screws through the innermost holes here, through the L brackets. And on the back side, we will use these nylock locking nuts. We do have a channel in here that these fit into. So the nut side of this bolted connection will be toolless. We will only be using a 3mm Allen hex key from the outside on these. The shorter M6 screws with washers are meant to connect the L bracket to the hinge. There are 2 sets provided. And then the longer M5 screws are the leftover fasteners that will connect this whole chunk through the hinge, through the closeout, into the bike. Now that I've gone through all the functions of the fasteners, let's actually configure this into the appropriate chunk. I'm using a Vibratite VC3 plastic safe thread locking compound because this will live in proximity of this thermoplastic closeout. And if we use a typical thread locking agent that is meant for mechanical connections, it's anaerobic, that typically leads to crazing and internal cracking of thermoplastic. So we don't want to use that. VC3 is what we are going to be making use of here. I'm going to prep all of my fasteners before I actually fasten them into the components. These countersunk screws do not require Vibratite because they are fastened into nylock locking nuts. Those nuts themselves have a locking feature within them, so we'll not need a locking method on them, just the machine screw connections. All right, here we go. Those are ready. I'm going to start with the hinge. As you can see, I have this component sloped this way, connecting to the hinge like so. Washer and screw will make that connection for us here. This will require a 4mm Allen hex key. We'll get that down to bottom and then back off just a tiny little bit to preserve some adjustability here. We'll lock that down at the very, very end. Opposite side, screw washer. And best practice here is to make sure that the actual L bracket is on the shoulder of that hinge before turning that screw down to the bottom. All right, we've left a little bit of adjustability, but now these guys are a little loose for me. So I'm gonna put them flat on the table and tighten down just a little bit more, just for the time being. This will make the rest of the assembly a little bit easier. Like I mentioned before, innermost hull, small countersunk screw through the slot here. Gonna penetrate through the backside by the slot. Now that the thread is engaged, we'll need to sink this nut geometry into that channel and hold it there. Use the 3mm Allen to get that down close to bottom, leave adjustability. Repeat on the other side. Okay, so now it's a matter of centering this on the flat bracket or the reverse of that. What we're trying to do is align the center line of this component with the center line of this component. You can do that visually. You can actually see through the middle hole the alignment versus the end of these brackets. So you can get that centered visually and then lock it down. And now I'm just going to apply a little bit more torque to make sure it's locked down all the way. And now we have this chunk ready to go. These protruding bosses from the hinge interface with these inner boss wells. And once we take the bike apart, I'll show you how to get this componentry into the bike and then use these screws to fasten it on there. All right, now let's talk about the license plate light in combination with these components. If you are mounting our license plate light or any center mounted light, these steps will be helpful. For this particular product, we decided to go with a separate connector that is plug and playable to the harness of the bike. And then this accepts the wires from the license plate light. This way we don't have to outfit the license plate light with a big connector that then potentially has us make a bigger hole in the closeout We don't want that. We want cosmetically congruent closeout with the bike. So you'll need to use this harness with the license plate light, yellow to red, black to black, like so. These will cinch down, you plug this in, and it's pretty simple. The only ambiguous thing at this point is probably the routing of the wire. Our license plate light sits center here and gets sandwiched between the flat bracket and license plate itself. The wire will need to be routed through here. I typically go through this window, and if need be, because of this cutout, you can actually accomplish a zip tie connection here between the wire and the aluminum component. So ultimately, this will sit like this, route through here, up through the closeout, and total assembly here will look something like this. Once we get on the bike, I will show you how to get this connected and the sequence of events that need to take place to get this routed and connected properly. Let's go rip down the bike and I'll show you how to get those steps done. Let's begin the process by removing the license plate and saving the hardware for subsequent reuse. I'm gonna grab a 4mm Allen hex key, remove these 4 fasteners here. The fasteners are responsible for holding the fender onto the bike. When I start backing out the last one, I'm gonna support the fender with my hand so it doesn't just drop off. Now, as we move this fender down, we will expose the wiring for our signals and license plate light. They do have stowage here in these channels that fit these nice JST plugs. As we move this down, they should all pop out. I'm gonna undo all of these one by one. To remove these connectors, press down on this tab here and that moves the detent out of its keep window. You will notice that we have 2 in the male configuration and 1 in the female configuration. The female here is for license plate light. And these are the signals. If all that you're doing is installing the closeout only, you'll pop the wiring hole cap through, get the parts seated in here via matching the tab from the closeout on top of the lip here. Once that is done, you push this entire closeout forward, push it in, it'll snap in for you, hold itself captive. You'll use the Vibratite that I mentioned in the opening scenes to dose the threads on these smaller screws that came with the closeout, and then you get this fastened in. And that's the entire procedure. So if you're only installing the closeout, these steps will be all you need. If your selected items require the fender eliminator with the closeout, you'll couple it up like this. If you are not running wires, the cap would be in here. And then we use the longer screws that came with the fender eliminator kit. Feed them through here, and then they end up above, going into the same holes we just used for the closeout only. This does need to get popped in first, like so. And then you dose the threads on these screws with Vibratite and get them in here. Now, I am going to couple up the installation steps here with our license plate light, just because roughly half of our customers do purchase our license plate light for these systems. So I will show how to get that situated in there, connected, and properly run the wires through. So let's back up one step here. All right, so we have the fender eliminator chunk, closeout chunk together, the license plate light will end up sitting here, clamped between the license plate and its bracket. The wire from the license plate light will route either up above here or through the curved slot. Either is fine. I'm just gonna go through the slot and up through the wiring hole. Now for this pre-configuration, we wanna make sure this is a flat cable that has 2 wires running through a shielding that is oval in shape. So we wanna make sure it's not twisted about its axis and that it'll fit nicely through here. Once that's done, I also need to let you guys know that you will need to have ample slack here for when you go to adjust your license plate angle. If it's too tight, you might strain this wire. If you leave it a little bit more loose with ample slack, you'll be able to make your adjustment and then shove it in for its final keeping. All right, so we have a wire that comes out of the top of our closeout ready to go in here, but we have this problem. We only have 2 conductors with no connector on there. So for the plug and play ability of this whole system, we have a sub harness here that will connect via the OEM JST connector into the license plate light harness connection and present us with this type of a toggle connector. Now we do need to go under this area. We need to have this pulled away from the bike to be able to house all of this in there and make our connection. So let's do that now. I'm going to use 4mm Allen, pull out these 2 fasteners and then subsequently these 2. They do differ from each other even though the head looks the same. So please keep track of what came out of where. The difference is the depth of the shoulder on this fastener. This one has a very shallow shoulder. Contrast that with the shoulder of this location fastener. You can see this one has a much longer shoulder. So long shoulder here, short here. Now with those 4 fasteners off, we can pull away on this panel until the tabs from the sides clear from the side panels. That's really all the space we need. I just need to be able to get my hand behind here. Now we will make the connection below here, but the actual harness connection needs to come up and get plugged in. So I will want to get that in through the center slot here. All right, so we are now connected to the harness. We have our license plate light secondary connector hanging out. Grab the wire, and now we will need to route the wire through the inside again to reach here. And now we will perform this connection here next to this connector body. We will connect the red to the yellow and black to black. I'm gonna bottom out these wires in here and close the toggles. Now I'll power it up. Need to make sure that we actually have light coming out of this license plate light. It looks like I failed to make a good connection, and we've seen that happen with customers where you just dump it in, close the toggles, and keep moving forward without checking it. You may have a problem down the line. All right. Once you've successfully made this connection and the light stays on even when you apply motion to this assembly, that is good to go. And we will now need to find a location to stow this. And I believe the best location is right up above this area of the closeout. So I will do some S-folding here. Get that up above this area. Make sure that it's not bulking up. There is enough space here. Now I will push the tabs from the black piece here under the painted piece. When the wiring below this surface, up above this part, is distributed properly, it will not impede the reclosure of all of these panels together. And at that point, we can grab the appropriate fasteners and get them put back in. I'm gonna start the threads, but not tighten them down just yet until all of the fasteners are in, or all 4 of these fasteners rather. This is where I'm gonna ensure that all the gaps are closed and tight and everything's looking good. So let's go ahead and get more of this wire shoved in. Still have about 6 inches of bulk that we need to take up. Now I'm able to get this tab up above the lip of the receiving feature. Once that happens, closeout just snaps in. Now I'll line up these bosses with the counter bores in the closeout. And using the longer screws, I will start those threads. Once these 2 screws are tightened, it'll be time to bring in the license plate. I did save these fasteners for this step. Now, let's talk about the license plate light real quick. As you can see, I still have some slack on it that was discussed previously. I did that for the purpose of being able to adjust the angle here. So we will tighten that up at the end. There is a red masking over a double stick tape here. This is for the purpose of sticking to the backside of your license plate in case you need that. I typically just use a clamping force between the license plate and the bracket to get the license plate light clamped in. So that's what I'm gonna do here, but choice is yours. You can actually apply that. And that is 3M acrylic adhesive on that little adhesive pad. It's permanent, it's very strong. If you want to make sure that that will never come off, you can go ahead and apply it. Okay, I'm gonna center it now, make sure it hangs level. Center my license plate light. And tighten down all the way. Now, using a 4mm Allen, I'm gonna unlock the hinge, and that will permit me to make the adjustment here. See, this is why I kept some slack here. If this were to be too taut, I'd possibly pull out the wire from the license plate light and damage it, so we don't want that. Okay, now it's about trying different angles. Obviously this, nobody can see the license plate from the back. That's not useful. I like it somewhere in this range. I'm gonna keep it here. This is pleasing to me. And I'm gonna lock down on these hinges all the way. I'm gonna grasp the whole assembly as I turn that screw in. Apply enough torque to lock it in place. If you ever need to redo this, make sure that you have enough slack on the wire and then perform your adjustment. So now I'm gonna take up the slack of this wire to make it look good. All right, and that's pretty much it. Let's give this one last test. We do have proper function. Everything's looking great. So we are truly done. Now remember, the signaling components do have a separate video because we do have several options that you guys can opt for. So we wanted to do that as a separate chunk. Please see that on our YouTube channel or tstindustries.com within the product page of that product. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. And I like hearing from you. So hopefully you'll leave me some comments, maybe like and subscribe, all that nice stuff. See you later.